Hello, I'm Hannah, and this is Hannah's Books. I'm thrilled to be filming my TBR for one of my favorite events of the year, Jane Austen July. This reading event is hosted by Katie at Books and Things, Marissa at Blatantly Bookish, and Claudia at Spinster's Library. I look forward to this event every summer. Today, I want to share the challenge categories with you and talk you through some of the books and other things I'm considering picking up in order to meet the challenges. So let's get started. First off, the host of this prompt make it clear that participating in this event doesn't require you to meet all of the prompts. If you decide to read just one related thing, you're in. But for those of us who love considering what we might read, even if we suspect we might not actually get to everything, there is a whole list of possible categories to inspire us. The first challenge is the most central, to read one of Jane Austen's main 6 novels. Although we can choose any one we like, this year's group read is Sense and Sensibility, a book that was actually my favorite Austen novel back when I was first reading her work. It has been several years since I've read it, and I'm very much looking forward to this read. I think I'm going to use this edition, the annotated version, with Austen's text on one side and the spread and extensive annotations about historical references and occasional literary discussions lined up on the other side of the spread. I quite liked reading the annotated Pride and Prejudice, produced by the same imprint, so I have high hopes. And mostly, I'm really looking forward to hearing what all the rest of you, whether you're new to Sense and Sensibility or old fans, have to say about this book. The second challenge is to read something by Jane Austen that is not one of her main 6 novels. I'm going to read the Jane Austen Letters. It's a selection made by Oxford World Classics, which includes about 2/3 of her surviving correspondence. On the back cover, it says, "Always entertaining, Jane Austen's letters are a fascinating record not only of her day-to-day existence, but of the pleasures and frustrations experienced by women of her social class, which are so central to her novels." Another one of the challenges, which I'm going to discuss out of order here, is to read a book by a contemporary of Jane Austen. I'd like to read from Dorothy Wordsworth's The Grasmere and Alfoxden journals. Dorothy Wordsworth was the sister of the poet William Wordsworth, and friends with Coleridge as well, and these journals recount time that Dorothy and William spent together. She writes about everything from the garden to their regular walks through the countryside. From what I hear, many of the people and events detailed in these journals also show up in William Wordsworth's poetry, and William himself acknowledged that, quote, "She gave me eyes, she gave me ears." Sounds like these journals might be fascinating. Okay, the next challenge is to read a nonfiction work about Jane Austen or her time. I have 3 books I really want to read for this challenge, and while I doubt I can read all of them, I'm going to name all of them here. The first is related to Austen's letters and Wordsworth's journals, and that is the joint biography called Jane and Dorothy, A True Tale of Sense and Sensibility by Marian Veevers. How appropriate to read a book with this subtitle right now. These 2 women were just 4 years apart in age, and in many ways lived very similar lives, and had relatively similar experiences. The jacket flap points out that both women left an indelible mark on literary culture, albeit in very different ways. This book sounds fascinating. I'm also quite interested in Ruth Wilson's book, The Jane Austen Remedy. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a book can change a life. Wilson wrote this book while she was in her 80s, looking back on a lifetime with Austen. She read her first Austen in the year 1947 and never stopped. And in her 80s, she went back to school, wrote a dissertation about Jane Austen, and earned a PhD. This book is, as she says elsewhere, a memoir of reading. That is an account as she says, of reading in spirals, where she goes back and forth between Austen's words, which she's read so many times, and the memories they trigger in her brain, something she thinks provides a more vigorous and more personal connection to the text. It sounds like a lovely read. The third nonfiction work about Jane Austen or her time is the new book, Love and Marriage in the Age of Jane Austen by Rory Muir. Interestingly, Katie at Books and Things and Marissa at Blatantly Bookish are thinking about reading Muir's earlier book about younger sons during Regency England. This new book focuses specifically on the creation of families. While Austen herself never married, marriage is at the core of all of her novels. The main characters are usually pursuing husbands or wives, sometimes for the sake of financial security or social advantage, but of course also for love. Using not only the way novels of the time portrayed love and marriage, but also how individuals, real people, wrote about those topics in their letters and diaries, Muir explores both the emotional experiences revolving around marriage and also its social role. As the jacket copy says, Muir illuminates the position of both men and women in marriage, as well as those spinsters and bachelors who chose not to marry at all. Rory Muir is a scholar, and this book is published by a university press, but it also seems to be quite accessible to non-academic readers interested in Jane Austen and her time. The next challenge, read a retelling of a Jane Austen book or a book of historical fiction set in Jane Austen's time. Well, I have one of each, and both are a genre I have never read before, romance, unless you count Austen's novels as romance. And reading romance seems quite appropriate after talking about Muir's nonfiction book. First, I plan to pick up a Regency romance written in 1950 by the queen of Regency romances, Georgette Hare. I'll be reading her novel, The Grand Sophie. I always fall in love with spunky, young female characters, and I gather that Sophie is an excellent example of one. She is spending a bit of time with her aunt in London while her father is stationed in Brazil. She takes her new world by storm and soon has a whole melange of suitors knocking on her door. This story sounds exuberantly joyful, and I'm looking forward to it. The other romance I want to read is not historical fiction about the Regency period, but instead a modern romance by the book by Julia Sunburn. Is a retelling of Persuasion, supposedly. It is also, I guess we could say, light academia. This is the story of a professor of literature who's working towards tenure right as her ex-boyfriend is appointed president of the college where Anne teaches. I'll read from the back of the book. Witty, warm, and full of heart, by the book is an ode to bookish girls everywhere and the men who love them. I haven't called myself a bookish girl in decades, but this book sounds like it could be fun. Okay, the last two challenges are not about things to read, but about things to watch. First is to watch a direct screen adaptation of a Jane Austen book. I'd love to see both of the two major screen adaptations of Sense and Sensibility. I've seen both before, several times, and very much love them both. It'll be interesting to watch them immediately after I've just read Austen's book, when many details from the original are fresh in my mind. And the last challenge is to watch a modern screen adaptation or retelling of a Jane Austen book. I might watch the web series of Sense and Sensibility called Eleanor and Marian Take Barton, I believe. But this is probably my lowest booktube associated priority this month. Well, that will do it for my Jane Austen July TBR. I can't wait to get started soon. Thank you so much to Katie and Marissa and Claudia for hosting this wonderful event. And thanks to all of you for joining me today here on Hannah's Books. See you soon.